into the SDR onboarding in a second, but Haley, let's hear about your background. Who are you? Where you been? What do you do now?
Yeah, so I started my career as a teacher. I actually taught first grade and then I taught third grade. And after 2 years of teaching, as much as I did love the job, I didn't feel like the education system set me up for success. And I could probably talk about that for hours, but not what we're here to cover today. And I desperately wanted to get into tech. At the time, I was located in the South Bay, in like the San Jose area. And so everybody around me was in tech, and I really wanted to give it a try. I was also a student athlete in college and kind of missed the competitive side of my life. And so I thought that sales would be a good way to kind of quench that thirst. And I interviewed with, gosh, countless companies. I didn't, I actually went for ed tech because I thought that that would have been the smoothest transition. And when I was hired into fintech by my current boss and founder, Derek Evianth, I was thrilled. By that time, was exhausted from interviewing, was ready to kind of really prove myself in the BDR motion. And so I joined a small seed company that did treasury management, and I absolutely loved it. I thrived in the outbound space, and especially at a seed company, are given very little instruction, very little training. And so I was kind of free to do whatever it took to get the meeting. And I was able actually to hit quota right away. So I loved being a BDR. When Derek left to start Drivetrain Revenue, which is, we're fractional RevOps. Right now we're doing AI enablement. He asked me to join as their head of outbound. And so I've been training SDRs and advising startups on their go-to-market motion, as well as how to integrate AI into their sales motion for about a year now. And I'm loving it. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Love that career journey from teacher to SDR, and now killing it as an advisor for go-to-market and for AI across that go-to-market. That's really awesome. Love that story. Let's talk about onboarding. Let's talk about training. These are a couple stats that I pulled, and there's a lot of different stats out there, but this is kind of an aggregation of the main numbers that I was seeing. That, and this tracks with my experience as well, having run SDR teams for over 10 years. To get SDRs up to speed, it takes about 3 months, a little bit over 3 months. But the average tenure of an SDR is only 14 months. So you're spending all this time training and you're investing all these folks, but there's a constant revolving door of people. And hopefully that's for the right reasons. You know, they're getting promoted, they're moving into sales roles or marketing roles or whatever, but often it's for the wrong reasons, and they're leaving the company and they're, you know, going to pursue something else. So the question that I have for you is, why is onboarding so hard?
I think it's really tough. And I have always said that hiring BDRs, especially a founding BDR or startup grade BDR, is just as tough as being a BDR itself, because you're looking for very specific qualities in that person, and you're kind of taking the chance, because a lot of times it's an entry level somebody right out of college.
Yeah.
I think the BDR role is, and the SDR role is so crucial. It's so important, especially today. Getting an SDR or a BDR who can book meetings is getting increasingly more difficult in today's market. And so the burnout, I think, is tough for them, but as well as getting them up to speed straight out of college is really hard. And somebody too, for me, like I was coming out of teaching and I hadn't ever used like Slack before. So you're looking at a set of tools that they've never used or had in your interface. My brother actually wants to be a BDR really badly, and he's interning with us at Drivetrain, and it's so interesting for me to have to explain to him what Slack is. Like, sometimes you just forget that like this is something they haven't seen before. Although they've worked with different kinds of tech, they haven't worked with, you know, an email engagement tool. Maybe their LinkedIn isn't as strong. You know, there are a lot of things that makes it difficult for BDRs and SDRs to ramp quickly.
100%. And I would say something that I see a lot of, Haley, is the expectation that buyers have for the knowledge that all the employees have is increasing, and it has been over the years increasing significantly. And so the business acumen that entry level people need to have, and entry level, I put that in quotes, most SDR, sales development, business development, are either new to tech. They've made a transition the way Haley did from teaching into the tech, or maybe it's their first job out of college. And often that business acumen is a huge gap. And so I've been very intentional in training that into people so that they create a good buyer experience. If your SDR teams in many cases are the front lines, it's the first interaction that a prospect or a customer will have with your company. And if that interaction isn't a good one, like, it's tough to overcome that bad first impression. And so that has been a really, really sharp focus of mine for a long time, is how can we develop that business acumen? Make sure that SDRs actually understand the industry's accounts and personas that they're selling into in a deep, meaningful way to have meaningful conversations. And so how can AI help close this gap with learning the systems, learning how to actually execute the job, but also developing this business acumen?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate with the BDRs that I've been training at the companies that we work with at Drivetrain, that they embody all the characteristics that I think I would want in a BDR. I've worked with so many talented BDRs this year. And, a couple of new hires that we've gotten ramped in a week or 2 weeks because we're using AI. And the reason that makes it so much easier, honestly, I think, is the brand voice feature that we have, is creating a voice that the founder, that the C-level, the executives are comfortable with putting out. Because a lot of times it's hard to put that trust. Like, as you said, this is their first interaction with prospects, with the company, is with a BDR or SDR. And so it's so important, and they have to feel like they can trust that person to put out the right message. But when you have the right message already built out and put into, hopefully, Copy.ai, the crafting the messaging, making their cold call scripts stronger and better, as well as like LinkedIn notes, is so much easier because they already understand kind of the message that they want to be putting out, and they're not going rogue on their own. So I've seen really, really quick turnaround times with our BDRs this year. We've been so fortunate.
Yeah, you mentioned that you've done this onboarding for a handful of your clients, and you're seeing productivity in 1 or 2 weeks versus that 3-month timeline. That's huge, a huge lift. And what I've seen a lot of is the way that anybody, but especially SDRs, can interact with an AI sort of agent is to do exactly what you said. Just have better call scripts, better emails, all those types of things. But it's also just to kind of like brainstorm and learn about a persona, about an account, about an industry in a much faster way. And for me, I think a lot about what held me back as an individual was confidence. If I didn't feel like I was going to be able to confidently pick up the phone and have a conversation with a CTO, a chief technology officer, like, I wasn't going to make cold calls. And anybody who's been in the sales or SDR role, you have that call reluctance, and it's all upstairs. And so for me, I like to focus on onboarding as shrinking what I call time to confidence. How much time does it take for that new rep to feel confident in their value props, in their business acumen, in the persona, in all these things? And the way that you can interact with an AI agent to make that happen is pretty cool. So with that said, let's see it. Haley, do you have a workflow that you can show us that helps with this onboarding?
Yeah. So let me pull it up. So I like the cold connection to LinkedIn right now, because I think that it's important for SDRs and BDRs to be growing their network. And so I'm going to show this, where it's interesting with the data that we've collected over the past year or so. A lot of the data is pointing to not having a connection message, and is in the same token, there's I guess statistics to back up that a connection message does help.
Yeah.
And so, and something that's interesting too is when I work with different industries and the prospects you're reaching out to is drastically different. Taking the insights that you've gained somewhere else, you need to make sure that you don't have the bias, because just because it works with a certain prospect, and that kind of goes with any advice you're getting, is that keep in mind that your buyer persona is different.
Yeah.
And so I think that the connection message can be powerful. I definitely am more apt to connect with somebody if they have a connection message that's personalized to me. So I really have been liking this workflow, which is a new part of Copy I noticed from the operating system. So of course, as soon as I saw it, I grabbed it. And I always use my founder as my guinea pig here. So I actually ran the test earlier. And so Brian Sowards is our principal and co-founder. And I put in the connection note. I just wanted his advice as a founder. And something that I love about this workflow too is that I'm able to kind of retest the step based on the scraping of the profile. Maybe that wasn't the personalization that I was necessarily looking for, but can always go here. I like how it's pulling specific use cases from his LinkedIn. And I tell people this all the time, is that in using Brian as my test subject all the time, I learn more about my founder than I had ever known, because it pulls out things and I was like, wait, really? And then I have to go back into his profile. I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. And so this is something that we're seeing is really helping, because a lot of people are being not more cautious, but a lot more selective with who they're connecting with. And so in order to make yourself look helpful, like you're going to help them, like you're going to solve a problem that they have, you need to have done the research and to show, I know who I'm reaching out to, and I'm being very intentional about that. And I like how Copy does this in a way where I can still learn about the person here in the scraping of the profile, but it kind of summarized the information for me here. So I still can see who I'm meeting with, who I want to book a meeting with, but also I'm getting it consolidated into one little connection note.
I like that a lot. So, and we actually have a poll question. I'm curious how long it takes people to onboard their SDR. So Nathan, if you can run that poll, that'd be great. This little workflow that you showed here, how does this help with onboarding? Well, one, from a system standpoint, like instead of having to train people on what does a good connection request look like and all these things and go back and forth and test this, it's like, hey, we want you connecting with people in your target market, that your target personas, and we're going to help you architect these LinkedIn connection requests. So go and do this work. So now instead of it taking a week to train somebody on how to do this, you truncate that time down to 30 seconds, and they can go and run this. And now when, especially somebody who's new to the role, you're building your network. You're going to have meaningful connections with people that are the titles that you care about. So now you can follow them, you can engage with their content, you can ask them questions, you can pick their brain. Like that kind of thing is really, really important and serves as a really useful accelerator for, again, your understanding of your personas, of your market, of your business acumen, all those types of things. And it's a huge unlock. And so now we're seeing the poll questions here. Most people are saying that 3 months or now more than 3 months. I'm not surprised to see that. That's certainly been my experience. And hopefully, if you can leverage these AI workflows in the right way, you can shrink that time down pretty significantly.
And I think too that they are able to see what a good connection note is. Yeah. So it's kind of because you have trained the AI, and a lot of people kind of I see put down the AI because of just the time that you have to put into it to get what you want out of it. And because you've trained the AI already to know exactly what you want to say, it's inadvertently training your SDR to see this is what a good connection message looks like versus bad. And you get that network boost right away.
100%. I like some other use cases, and this is more. So what Haley just showed is what we call a workflow, which is a kind of pre-programmed series of prompts that produce a certain output, and that's super useful and super scalable across your team. I also really like our chat ecosystem here for onboarding because it allows for more kind of, again, the SDR, the seller interacting with the agent to learn something. So let's say I'm a new seller, I'm selling into this industry, and I just said medical device industry, and I want to know what are the key trends in the medical device industry this year. And this is really, really important to know. So now I get a quick answer to see, okay, here are the things that I know my target audience is going to care about. I get them really nicely summarized, a top 5 list. And then I can go and double click into these sources to go and learn more and again accelerate the way that I'm learning. And so basically I always try and what the number one trait that I'm looking for in SDRs is curiosity. And if you have that innate curiosity and you have this AI capability to go and do this accelerated learning, you're going to, again, shrink that time to confidence in pretty incredible ways. And you can run the same sort of questions for, let's say I'm selling to a CFO. What are the key trends that a CFO cares about in 2024? And you can get that list. So you can learn about your personas, about your industries, your markets. You can learn key terminology like what are the key words in medical device or something like that. And you'll get the key things that you need to educate yourself on so that when you're on the phone with that chief medical officer, CMO in a medical device, is not a chief marketing officer, it's a chief medical officer. And now there are some key words that I'm going to need to know and just familiarize myself with. So the curious reps can accelerate the way they learn in really, really significant ways. And then you, the SDR manager or operations person or whomever, you can architect those workflows that Haley just showed for prospecting. And you can go and equip your team with all of these workflows so they can go and actually run the things that need to run really quickly.
And I like too how the chat shows the brand voice too, Kyle, about how to kind of create that to be central to the organization and make sure that it's kind of crafting the messaging the way that you would write normally. So I like that exercise as well.
100%. So now I want any excuse that I can to use a GIF from The Office. So I'm resharing the screen for no other reason than just to show this GIF of Michael Scott as a magician. This stuff that we're showing, this AI, when I saw it the first time, I was like, this is actual magic. And so what Michael the Magic here is going to show is some workflows that actually bring all of this to life. And Haley is going to go through and show a handful of those workflows that have been completely game-changing and like borderline legitimate magic for her. All right, so do you want to tee up this workflow and I'll share it when the time is right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the workflows that I fell in love with this year, I think that this was different from last year when it came out. I was super excited for this feature from Copy.ai because I talked to so many different BDR managers, SDR managers who ask their BDRs and SDRs to kind of go through the recent 10Ks that come out with the from public companies to see which initiatives would kind of prompt them to buy from that particular product. And I think that that's a really great way to use outbound. It kind of gives you a reason to reach out to someone. I think a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, I get hit up every day. This is, I have my inbox is flooded, my LinkedIn is flooded, whatever it is. You need in 2024, you're going to need a reason to reach out to your prospects and show, again, how well it's been researched and how much you care about the problems that they're going through. And so this workflow has been Michael Magic for me this year in terms of that. So this workflow specifically just kind of adds the brainstorm value from what you can gain from the SEC filings as well as the 10K, but this can also kind of link to another workflow to start making that outbound message so that it includes those initiatives that are relevant to your company. And a lot of times too, I get people who ask, they'll say, well, my AEs who are going on a discovery call, I want them to know the account. I think it's important that they know what's going on in the company. They need to do the research themselves. And that's absolutely true. But combing through a huge 10K is probably not the best use of their time when at least this narrows it down for you to point out what applies to you specifically. And so, Kyle, are you able to show kind of how this workflow worked?
Indeed, yeah. So what we're looking at here is given a certain input. So in this case, it's going to be we're researching a public company. We could have a separate workflow for private companies that would have a different set of actions. But we're saying, given the company's stock ticker symbol, go and find the most recent earnings call, analyze that call, go look for SEC filings, go read their 10K, and then brainstorm what the value is going to be for your company and what they're trying to do this year. So when we run this workflow, what we're asked for two inputs, and those two inputs are what is the ticker symbol of the company that we want to do research on, And then what is the value prop of your company so that the AI can connect the dots between what it learns from the public information and then how it connects the dots to your value prop. So what I've done is I've run this for Snowflake. Snowflake is a B2B database company. And they are, the value prop I put in is for Copy.ai, generative AI platform. And here is the results that you see. So the earnings call is here. The analysis of the earnings call is here. Here are their focus areas. Here are the struggle areas. And then the AI went and looked through SEC filings as well and analyzed the 10K. So again, focus areas and where they're placing bets for growth, struggles and challenges from the 10K. And so two different sources here, the 10K, the earnings call. Hopefully there's going to be some overlap, but there's always some interesting differences. And then here is potential value of Copy AI for that company that I can use to inform my outreach to those companies. Anything to add on there, Haley?
Yeah, I think that this workflow is great for both BDRs and AEs for the reasons that I kind of stated earlier, is that the value can be valuable to those sending outbound to get the meeting, to get them to feel like, you know what, they've done the research, they may be able to solve this problem that we are putting, you know, a lot of time and resources in 2024. And as well as building an account plan for an AE who's ready to close this deal and get them ready to the specific use cases that the company is looking for. And they might end up getting on that call, and this particular person isn't concerned with those specific values. However, it already is building rapport that is saying, hey, we looked at this. We know what your priorities are. How do you fit into that equation so that we can help, and how can we make you look the most successful that you can? And then for BDRs, it's showing that, you know what, I have a purpose for reaching out to you. You have a problem, I have a solution, and this is X, Y, and Z, why you should give me 30 minutes, because for the BDR, they are selling time, and that's
Exactly.
a close.
Exactly. And then when you're reaching out to a C-level persona, you dang well better know what's actually going on inside that account. What is the C-level executive? What are they actually thinking about? And even if you're reaching out to somebody maybe a little bit further down the hierarchy, you can say, hey, your CEO said this is a priority. Here's how we can help solve that. Are you interested in learning more? That is unignorable messaging. And so if you really understand where they're making these bets and what is top of mind for their executive team, and you can connect the dots to your value prop, you're going to stand out better than 99% of the outreach out there that's just super general, super vague, maybe not super personalized, or doesn't have a lot of resonance for that account. So really, really important that you understand these things, and having the AI as your kind of brainstorm buddy to figure this out is really, really useful. And then the way that you can go and you can run this one off and you can input ticker symbols, or you can upload a CSV, import a CSV, where one row is a string of ticker symbols for all the public companies in your territory or in your account plan, and then put in your value prop, and you can export the CSV. So I ran this for Snowflake, I ran it for Confluent, and then you can have all this information in a CSV that you can just export. So you can run it in batches. The other cool thing is that if you're an operations person or if you're a manager or something like that, you can build this. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my. One moment. You can build this workflow, and then you can expose it to your team in this form view. So you can embed this form in your wiki or in your Slack channel or in your CRM or whatever it is. And then all your reps need to do is they can go in and just fill in this information and submit it, and they'll get the output. So there's a million different ways that you can set this up, and you can create a really nice standardized way of doing account planning and account research that does not require significant change management for your team. And overcoming that change management burden is often a pretty large burden for any manager or operations person on the call. They know that that can be a pretty big hurdle. So just completely clearing that hurdle by making it easy for reps to engage with this and giving a really valuable output. This is I think pretty game changing for teams.
Absolutely. And it definitely helps an SDR know the purposes and the reasons for reaching out to somebody and why that's important as well. Because just having it, just reaching out to them with the general value prop, hoping to get a fish on that line is not the way that we can be successful in 2024 outbound.
Yeah, exactly. And so to that point, like the account plan is one really important sort of upstream input. Now you actually need to go execute and you need to do that outreach. So Haley, how are you thinking about kind of connecting those dots between the account plan and then the actual act of creating a personalized email or a call script or whatever and actually going and executing? How do you connect those dots?
So I think that for either the account plan or let's start with the outbound, because I think that that's the most important thing. And two, I think that using this particular workflow, you should probably be very strategic on which accounts you want to reach out to using this, and not, again, it is not a spray and pray type of campaign. And you can run it in bulk, which is great, but running it in bulk, I would say, I like to do 20 to 30 accounts at one time, just so that I have a really good understanding of what the AI is providing, so that I can either tweak it or kind of prompt engineer it as I need to make sure that it's perfect and it is really saving me that time. And I think as well, it requires your SDRs and your reps to be very, very specific and personalized on why they're reaching out. And so you can either take the kind of summary that it gives you at the end and take out the initiatives you want and put it into a template that you already have. We have a BDR kind of using that particular strategy right now, and because he's found a really short way to there's very short value prop for his company and just wants to add that personalization on top. Or you can have the AI kind of say, this is a great chat feature, honestly, is to go into chat and say, we've found these are the key initiatives for, Apple this in 2024. And I want to write an email to this person. You can have them scrape the LinkedIn and it can personalize it to that person while taking those key accounts and your value proposition to make it a very short outbound email. And I think too, always prompting the tone as well as the length that you want the email is really important.
Yep.
And I always ask the AI to focus on the other person and not me, because a lot of times they try to find similarities that we may or may not have.
Yeah, that's lovely. And the way that we think about this is through this lens of what we call the AI sales OS. And so these workflows that Haley is talking about, we just showed the company research and insights one. And what Haley is referencing is the more personalized cold emails and call scripts and things like that. We think about this as an operating system. So you have this suite of workflows that are purpose-built for a specific use case inside of sales, whether that's prospecting or deal management, forecasting, operations, enablement, whatever it is. We have all these workflows that you can go and install. They're pre-built. You can go and run them right now. Or you can go and customize them for your unique business needs and tailor them for whatever it is specifically that you're trying to do for your team or your company or whatever it may be. And so we actually have another poll question. We're showing just the tip of the iceberg here. If you want a full demo of AI Sales OS, Nathan, if you could fire off that poll, just let us know. Raise your hand for a full demo, and we'll be in touch and we'll get you everything you need so that you can fully understand the art of the possible and fully see if this is something that would be useful for your team. That group demo is going to be on next Thursday, the 22nd at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So fire up that poll. And if you want to join, we'll be in touch. Now, let's talk about the future. So Yoda says the future is always in motion. The future is impossible to see. And to a certain extent, it's hard to argue with Yoda, but we also are sort of living in the future right now with a lot of these AI capabilities. And so my question for you, Haley, as you do a little forecasting for us on what does the future of sales look like, is what is the potential for AI for sales teams?
I think that the potential that you have, because I did see in the chat, there were a lot of people commenting on how AI will never replace a person. I think that's absolutely true. But what it can replace is the tedious tasks and the administrative work that you have salespeople to do when you hire them to sell. I think AI allows salespeople to actually do what they were supposed to do. I mean, Copy.ai's workflows pretty much run my entire life. Even if I want like a cool recipe, I'm going to say I have, these ingredients in my fridge, and like, how can I make a meal out of this without having to go to the grocery store in the middle of a nor'easter, which we just had here in Connecticut. But I have a workflow that takes my calls and transcribes them for me and kind of updates it. And that's the other great thing about Copy.ai that we didn't really go into today, is how many integrations you guys have with other platforms. And it's a very lightweight tool that can be put into your sales process very easily. I like for my call transcripts because a lot of times I go through my whole day of training and I'm like, what did I say that I was going to do for this person again? Oh, that's right. And I can go through and I can see my next steps based on what the transcription has given me, as well as the workflow that pulled out the key insights from the call. And I can make sure that that's done by 5 p.m. or whenever I had it due. And so I think that for the future, I would say that they will be able to focus on just that selling that very, very niche things that they need to know in order to get that deal through, while AI can do everything else for them that they're needing to do for forecast calls, for, going over a pipeline, for a one-on-one with their sales leader. And I think that getting ahead of that curve is very important as well, because Copy.ai, even since I became a user, I think a year ago or so, when you guys blew my mind on the first demo that I ever had, it's already changing and it's already getting more complex, which is a good thing, because I have all the background to understand how it works to prompt it correctly.
I think that's really well said. Like, AI is not going to be, this panacea, this cure-all for everything that ails you. But I think we're going to start to see a trend where the sellers who lean in to the technology, they're going to be the ones at the top of the performance pack, the top of the leaderboard. They're going to be the ones who are getting promotions, who are moving up a segment, or getting manager roles, or getting director roles, VP, whatever it is. I think there's going to be a pretty strong correlation between how much individuals lean into understanding and using AI tooling and how much they get promoted, how successful they are. And so, like, again, AI is not going to solve everything for you. The goal of AI is to basically unlock you to be more thoughtful, more strategic, more human, more creative in the way that you're doing your work. And that's what's so exciting to me about this platform, is that we're eliminating or greatly reducing a lot of the friction that currently exists for sales team. A lot of our salespeople, a lot of the robotic tasks are no longer things that you have to go and spend hours and hours and hours on, and you can go and get in a flash, so that you can go do the more strategic work. You can add value to your business. You can position yourself as irreplaceable inside your company. And that's pretty cool.
And I think too, that's what's going to it's just going to set you apart. And you don't even have to necessarily disclose what you're doing to set it apart, because, if you want to keep that secret to yourself. But there is definitely so many use cases for salespeople to use to make themselves more knowledgeable in their industry, because of the tasks that they're not doing, the ones that they're able to hand off. And so I'm seeing that already with some of the reps that I'm working with, and those BDRs I'm training. It's interesting.
Yeah. Those reps that you are working with, Haley, a lot of what I see is like, people are, they don't exactly understand the art of the possible. They don't know what they can do with AI. So that's kind of point one. Point two is they were burned by ChatGPT. They tried to use ChatGPT 18 months ago, and they logged in, created an account, and then they saw the blinking cursor, and they were like, what do I do? And they're like, write me an email. And the email sucked. And they're like, oh, AI sucks. It's never going to be useful. And so there's a little bit of that kind of reluctance or hesitancy that people have about AI, because the tools they've used have not been particularly useful. So what kind of reaction are you getting to people as you're training them on AI? And what recommendations do you have for people to kind of overcome those hurdles?
So I had that exact same reaction when I was introduced to ChatGPT. When I was a BDR, personalization is what kept me afloat in terms of quotas and getting above quota and everything. And when our head of RevOps came to me one day, and he was like, a competing BDR with you is using this. Look at this. Your mind is going to be blown by this. And he's like, and it's working and whatever. And I was looking at it and I was like, yeah, well, he's getting more meetings because it's personalized. I've been personalizing the whole time. And frankly, I can write a better email than this thing. And so I had almost written AI off completely myself. And then when I was introduced to Copy.ai, I was like, oh my gosh, it writes just like me, because we had my brand voice in there and we had everything that we needed. And it was short, because the ChatGPT emails that were being generated were so long. I was like, that no one's going to read that. And so that's when I kind of gained my faith again. And now in training BDRs who are coming out of college, it's been an interesting experience, because they've been using AI at school for research on papers or presentation or whatever they're using it for. And so they understand it. I mean, one of our BDRs who I just think the world of, she was up to speed. She was straight out of college. She was up to speed in like a week or two. She was able to start cold calling. And on her first connect, she booked a meeting. And I was like, what? Like, and because we had laid it all out, I was like, this is your general script. I'm not sure that I'm a huge script believer, but I had, points for her because the conversation tends to go where it goes. And she was like, yeah, she's like, why did you say that was going to be so difficult? She was like, we got it on the first one. I was like, I understand that. I was like, I get it, but that was just not the experience that I had, right? I mean, at a seed company guest checking email and kind of coming up with my own scripts and doing all of my own personalization, to having a full stack of AI that she's now a pro at. She's just crushing it. I hope she's here today, actually. I think she told me she was coming. But it was so interesting to see that reaction, because I was like, okay, this job is getting easier. We can make it a little bit simpler for SDRs and BDRs coming in, because it is such a difficult job.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get half the credit that it deserves.
It's like getting that meeting on your first cold call it's like Taylor Swift getting a Super Bowl on when she's cheering for her team for the first time. It's not fair. It's not fair. You got to know what pain is to really appreciate it. That point about scaling the personal outreach, this was one of the main things that I was super unimpressed with AI when I saw it. And you all have probably seen this too, where the AI companies are showcasing their email writing capabilities, and without fail, the first line is, "I hope this finds you well." And it's like, God, we've been just beating this into people's heads for 5 years, that don't start your emails with "I hope this finds you well." And so what we've done internally is we have this out of the box personalized cold outbound email workflow. And I worked personally with our internal product team and prompt engineers to say, here is what I do when I am thinking about and writing an email. Here are the inputs that I need. And then here is how I actually go and connect the dots between the research I've done on the person and the account and my company's value prop. And so what our product team did is they architected basically my thought process for writing an email in this workflow. So you input a handful of things about your prospect and the account. And this can be automated too with our lead enrichment workflows. You can chain those together, but nevertheless, you could manually do it or it could be automated. And then you basically tell it to run the workflow. So based on your value prop and then based on the information you have, it writes a really good, like 50 to 75 word email, and it's all out of the box. And what's interesting is I was testing this workflow to see how useful it was by using Lavender, the email scoring assistant. And the emails that this workflow creates are all getting over 90 scores in Lavender. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really powerful. So like, I'm really excited about the way that we're helping, again, eliminate a lot of that menial task. And again, not replacing people, but make them more thoughtful, make them more strategic, give them time back to do the harder things in sales and kind of streamline a lot of the more mundane robotic things. That to me is the future of where we're going. And so I'll ask you the impossible question now, which is, so much has changed in the last 18 months. And now I'm going to ask you to forecast the next 5 years. Like, what do you see happening over the next 5 years, Haley, for SDRs, for salespeople in general, because of AI?
Well, I'm hoping that it gets better for salespeople, for SDRs, for BDRs, because they're able to kind of focus on being industry thought leaders versus someone who, has to make 70 calls a day, has to do 20 LinkedIn, messages a day, has to pump out so many emails, because I think that in 5 years we'll be so streamlined and so much better at selling because of AI that, you know, hopefully more deals get done. The salespeople who are embracing the technology, I think, will end up, you know, more in that leadership space. And then once that happens as well, you know, they know the power of it and can teach it better and kind of pass it down to their team. In 5 years, I really, really hope that we are not updating CRMs manually. I did see that in the chat. I was like, yep, as much as everyone loves Salesforce, you know, getting it to be enriched automatically would be a goal of mine. And I know that copy is a big part of getting that goal across the finish line. And I hope that too, that we look just better educated as an industry, and I guess in a role as salespeople, to know how to approach the buyer, specifically C-suite and executive buyers. I think that that's somewhere where we have still a long way to go.
100%. I totally agree that I'm on a very similar page. I feel like and I've said this before in other forums, I'll say it again here. I don't think it's the elimination of the SDR role. I think it's more of a rebirth of the SDR role, more of an evolution where, you know, the entry level sales gigs are not going to be siloed to top of funnel work and prospecting work and creating the meeting and handing it off and then doing that again. Of course, that's still a critical part. Like, you got to open the door into the prospect account before you can close the door and produce revenue. And so, of course, somebody still needs to do that. However, because a lot of the more menial manual tasks are becoming easier to execute via AI, the entry-level salesperson will have more time to do more, to kind of break down those silos that currently exist between SDR and AE, or SDR and SE, or SDR and marketing, or whatever it is, broaden their horizons, have a broader or bigger impact across the business, and take on more of a kind of an inside sales role, where in SMB or down market segments, that's a full cycle role. Like, I see no reason why an entry-level salesperson can't go and execute that full cycle role. Or in upmarket segments, I see a really interesting sort of pairing of a tenured, seasoned enterprise AE with more of an inside sales kind of person that's riding co-pilot with them and strategically breaking into these large enterprise accounts and figuring out MSAs and figuring out you know, subsidiaries and lines of business, and just like being a more strategic partner with AEs in upmarket segments. So that's kind of what I see. And I hope that's what ends up happening, because that means that our vision is being realized, where people are more thoughtful, they are more strategic, they're making a bigger impact, and they're broadening their horizons at the same time, developing that true business acumen. So that's the future that I see. I think it's sooner than 5 years.
And they're able I mean, the SDR or BDR who's booked the meeting can pass on all the research that they did with the AI to get the meeting, right, to the AE. And, you know, it was interesting. I booked a meeting with a BDR who reached out to me on LinkedIn because her outreach was great, and I wanted to see what they had, but she wasn't on the call. And that was interesting to me, because I was just like, oh, that's a bummer. Like, I don't, you know, and the AE explained to me that the BDRs don't jump on those calls, those discovery calls. And I was like, that's kind of I don't know. As a BDR myself, I was on every single call that I booked, and thank God I was, because when I was promoted to an AE, I could kind of come in just like that, because I'd already had the pitch down and listened to it 100,000 times. And, you know, but the SDR is calling, she's, you know, making sure that all of her metrics are in order for that day. And I was like, you know what, that kind of makes me sad, because, you know, she could learn just as much being on the call as she is making calls. And I think that that's, you know, something that AI can take off her plate, is because the meeting gets booked faster and in a better way. You know, they have time to almost start being a SE or a AE in training.
Nice. I love that. That makes a lot of sense. All right, everybody. Well, that's a wrap. I really appreciate it. Haley, you are awesome. Thank you so much for the wisdom, for the advice. If you're interested in learning more about Haley or about Drivetrain, Haley, where can they find you?
Yeah, at drivechainrev.com. Brian, can you put oh, there he is. He already did it.
Boom.
put the website in. Happy to talk to anybody after this call. And thank you so much for having me on, Kyle. You know, I'm a big fan of Copy.ai, and I appreciate you letting me talk about it today.
Of course, yes. And I would recommend connecting with Haley on LinkedIn as well. She shares really useful posts and content almost every day or maybe twice a day. And little secret, there may be an AI workflow that's powering that LinkedIn presence. But anyway, connect with Haley and you will not regret it. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. For those of you who raised your hand for the group demo, we will be in touch very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. This recording will get sent out sometime later in the week. Thanks, Haley.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.